we're going here and begin to show you things that you would not be able to see from an English translation. I don't care what the English translation is. You would actually need to know Hebrew in order to get it, because there's no way to bring it out unless you bring it out in a commentary. And many of these things, no one has time to bring all of those key points out. It just belongs to those who know Hebrew, okay? So once again, as is our custom, I'm going to start off tonight reading this to you. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'ha'aretz hayita tohu vavohu dechoshech al pani tehom ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al pani hamayim vayomer Elohim yahi or vayehi or vayar Elohim et ha'or kitov vayavde Elohim bin ha'or ubin ha'choshech vayekra Elohim la'or yom ve'lachoshech kara laila vayehi erev vayehi voker yom echad. So it doesn't sound as strange as the first time you heard it, right? It's starting to get a little bit of their flow. And really, this is going to be your final. All you're going to have to do is just read that to me. You send it by, text or email. All I want to know is that you can, really my biggest goal was really getting you to a place where that you could begin to pronounce Hebrew, whether you understood it or not. And then what we're going to do is, I just really feel like I've gotten some insight on how to take you guys faster. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here as this towards the end of the lecture today. And and you're going to find, and we're going to start, we'll be starting it next quarter. And I think you're going to find yourself in a place that you're going to advance very, very quickly. Once again, I wanted to spend this time, more than anything else, doing really three things. And primarily, it's the category of two things. Getting you to a place where that you can hear, where you can speak Hebrew, whether you understand it or not, where you actually are pronouncing words properly. And how do we do that? By you learning the phonetic sounds and doing a transliteration, which you're going to always do until you get it, okay? And even, they're going to come up against new words as you're going along. What you do is you work through those words, and then all of a sudden you just keep reading it until it comes as a flow. You can do it real quickly, and then over time, that flow is just there with you, okay? And then number two thing was, I wanted to bring you to a place where you could begin to learn how to pick out the three consonant roots, which then give you the insight to what the word is, because the word is going to be dressed up with suffixes, infixes, and prefixes, okay? And they're going to be presented in various different ways, whether it's noun, adjective, or verb. If you can always start with a three-letter consonant, or understand how to get at the three-letter consonant, you always work from the center out. And so that's what I'm starting to take you into right now by giving you the paradigms of the perfect and the imperfect, or the complete or the incomplete action. And I know that like some of that kind of hits you like, whoa, but most of you did your homework, and if you haven't, do it, because writing these things out are important. Once again, we're not dialoguing with another individual. We're interacting with the Bible. Therefore, it's incumbent upon us to say it out loud, to speak it, to write it, and to read it. That then makes up for the lack of the dialogue. And then after 2 years, you go to Israel for 3 months, and you'll be just flying. I mean, I've wanted to do that for so long. I know that if I went to Israel for 3 months and was immersed in the language for 3 months, I would just be flying with modern-day Hebrew. Because once you've got biblical Hebrew, it's not hard at all to transition, okay? So give me the next slide, please. And so in picking out those three-letter roots, that's why I gave you like the cal imperfect strong verb. And I wanted to start with strong verbs because strong verbs are easier to identify. There's a difference between strong verbs and weak verbs. And the strong verbs have consonants that are unlike ayin, hey, aleph, yod, and nun. Those are your weak verbs. And then what I gave to you here was in both the imperfect and the perfect. We'll get to the perfect chart in a second. I gave you four strong verbs, because you just keep this by you and you can actually figure out the paradigm for any verb. And I'm going to show you how to memorize this table where it's not so difficult. what you'll see is every one of these verbs have exactly the same prefixes, exactly the same vowel system. There's no difference here in all of these because they're all strong verbs. They're all in the same category. Then what I've given you is I've given you a verb like katav that has the dagesh in the first letter so that you can understand that it does have a bit of a unique treatment, okay, different from the others. We've given you a verb that has a consonant that's other than a begedekefet, which doesn't take the dagesh. So you can see when they have a dagesh and when not to have a dagesh. So you're going to have all of your examples right here. And we start off with the Cal simple form, okay, which is 3 consonants. And the Cal simple form is from the root that has exactly the same 3 consonants, but you got to understand this. The root doesn't have a meaning. The root has no meaning. You isolate the root from any meaning, and it's been a mistake that's been made over and over again. So when we look at the root, the most convenient thing is to pronounce the root in the Cal simple form, which is always or most all the time going to have 2 A sounds, okay? For example, sakar, katav, shamar, and kavatz. It's going to have 2 A sounds under those first 2 consonants. You heard that, right? As is represented by the gametz and the pata. Are you with me? Everybody with me? Hopefully you understand that. I know this is a lot to look at, and it's like shocking. You got to be kidding me. How are we going to do this? But I'm going to show you how to get into this to where that is not that difficult. Everything's a little scary when you first look at it, especially when it's got this much scratch to it. Okay? So go to the next slide real quickly for me. Okay, so this is the Cal Perfect Strong. This is the easiest one. Basically, all you have here in this are, as I'm showing in red, the suffixes. And I should have shown the imperfect in red so that you could see the prefix and the suffix, okay? But, forgive me, I didn't pull that together. Once again, what I'm doing here is I'm giving you an example of pretty much every strong Cal Perfect, every strong verb you're going to come in contact with. What's going to happen is when we go to weak verbs, you're going to lose one of those consonants. And now you're only going to have 2 consonants that you can identify that root from. And then you've got to understand the little tricks to figure out what's that missing consonant. So we're going to get to that. That's harder. That's later. And it's not that difficult, okay, because there's clues. But if you're going to get the clues, then you've got to just learn this and understand every one of these strong verbs, it's impeccable. They're absolutely treated the same with the same vowels. People get all concerned because the vowels change. But you know what? The vowels change in a meaningful way that you're going to learn later, okay? Right now, my second objective was simply to get you to a point where you can begin to pick out those 3 consonants. What is that root? Just in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, okay? Give me the next slide. So what I did is I said, okay, I'll go ahead and talk about this because it's kind of a summary of what I just said. But just a couple of rules to remember. That's what I have here, just a couple of rules for you to remember. Verbs are strong or weak, as I've been telling you. Right now, we're only going to focus on the strong verbs, okay? Weak verbs do not preserve the 3 roots, the 3 consonant roots, as I said. And you usually can identify those weak verbs as containing hey, yod, resh, aleph, and an initial nun. Okay? Just hold on to it for right now. Don't try to understand it all. I'm just introducing it to you. The more your mind has something introduced to it, the more you get it, the more familiar it becomes. First time it's like confusing, what is all that? Just relax, just take it in, okay? The Russians showed a long time ago, if you could get a person, get kids, children, and even adults to recline in a chair, relax, listen to some music in the background, that they would retain information that they never had been introduced to, they could retain it. It was an amazing, it's like an order of magnitude increase in learning skills. That was back in the 80s. There's been more done with that. Getting people just to relax. Don't get tense about it. Just hold up, relax. Just take it as it comes, okay? And then give yourself to just working through it, okay? So perfect, when learning the perfect tense, you must be able to distinguish between the root of the verb and the suffixes. So that's what we're doing. So that's the first way, easy way, 2 hands for beginners, pick out the root. So that I could take, 5, 6 different verbs. I could mix them up with different paradigms, either from the perfect and imperfect. You could look at them and pull out the 3 consonant root. And that's the beginning of it. And that's where you have to start. So that's what we're doing. So I gave you an exercise of Badal. And I also want to make sure that you understand that 3 letters, once again, constitute a root that really has no meaning. I think I put that here. The root itself, Badal, does not constitute a word. Okay? It's the root. And you don't use it. And if you're in academia, you don't say Badal. You say Vet Dalet Lamed. Okay? And if you're listening to some lecturer, he's not going to say Badal. He's going to say Vet Lamed Dalet. The easiest way, though, for us to be able to express the root is just to say it rather than going Vet Lamed Dalet. It's best for us is to go, well, we know what those verbs are going to be. It's going to have a sound underneath those first 2 consonants. Badal, let's just pronounce it that way. Everybody knows what we're talking about. Okay. Now, keep in mind that the Hebrew perfect tense expresses several past tenses in other languages. Okay, like with this one, which is your homework, which I'm going to be going over, which is the root from Badal, which is Badalnu. The Badalnu means we divided, we have divided, we had divided, we did divide, or we have been divided. So it just depends on what's the flow. You've just got that whole area of to choose from. And then as you get introduced more to this, you're going to go, oh, there's some words here in the Bible that you could go several different ways with, how you express it. Then you're going to get more insight to that verse of Scripture that you thought you understood, because you recognize, ooh, there's a bit broader scope of, these, for lack of a better word, filler words that we're using, okay? Imperfect. The second person masculine singular, third person feminine singular are always identical in Hebrew. I'm not going to keep it, keep some of these rules close to you. You don't have to try to memorize them. Next slide. I'm not going to go into that right now. I don't think it's really that meaningful. But what I'm doing is I'm expressing that because they're so identical, you got one that's masculine, one that's feminine, they're identical. The only way that you can understand it is by context, okay? And so we're going to make you familiar with that. No need to be intimidated by it. The second letter of the root one of the Bedag, the Beget Kafet letters must take a dagesh when the imperfect is formed, and that's going to be more meaningful to you later than it is now. I don't know why I gave it to you. Just other than when you're starting to study, keep those paradigms out in front of you and have a few rules for now, because we're going to do something that's better than this next quarter, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. Next slide, please. Okay, kind of blow this up for me a little bit. Okay, enlarge it. Now bring it down so we can see it. Okay, Badal means to divide. Okay, that's the root of the Hifthel. Okay, you look at the Hifthel. Okay, the Hifthel is what we had there in the Scripture in Genesis, Vayavdel, remember? Okay? And Hifthel is the causative. And there's several different ways that we could translate this, and we're not going to do it now. We'll translate it and look at different ways to translate it later. I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. And so when you break out, so you go all the way back to the root, and then out of that root, you can create 7 different stems. The first and most simple of stems is the call, perfect. But what you do, just like using that paradigm to make the different, person, gender, number, so you do the same thing with that root to go from a cow to an Hifthel to a Piel to a Pual to a Hifthel to Hifthel to Hithpual, okay? It's just modifications of that word, of that root. And so we'll talk more about how that works later as well. Just kind of letting you know about these 7 different, what we would refer to as stems. And the Hifthel, once again, the Hifthel is the causative stem. The cal is a simple active stem, okay? So, yeah, I'll try not to get too far ahead here. So, here's the paradigm. This was your homework, and this is what it's supposed to look like. And lo and behold, when you look at we did the paradigm off of what? Off of that chart that I gave you, because it is a strong verb. There is no aleph, there's no yod, there's no ayin, there's no resh, right? And there's no initial nun, so it's a strong verb. And I didn't give you the paradigms for the weak verbs. I only gave you paradigms for the strong verbs. So all you got to do is basically take and plug and chug. Just put the same kind of vowels and same kind of suffix that you had in your strong verb chart right here with badal. And now you're getting to understand how this works. You take these and you can take, let's see, how does that work? I think that, yeah, you can take nouns, you can take Hifdale verbs and change them into nouns. But I think I show you in the next lecture how that you can derive nouns and adjectives from the roots, okay? And then where that you could go look at this root, and now all of a sudden you go find nouns, you go find verbs, you go find adjectives, all built from that same root. So you'll learn that as you go. You'll see the cleverness of this as we move forward. Right now, I just want you to be able to get familiar with all of these different forms so that it doesn't shock you when you look at this and think, oh my goodness, I'm looking at another word. No, you're looking at badal. He has divided, he divided. You're looking at badla. She has divided, she divided. And then I got to back up here so I can read it. Badalta. You have divided, second person masculine singular. You're always going to identify it in this order. It would be cal, second person masculine singular. Okay? Badalta. Badalti, badalta, badalta, badalte, you have divided. Badalti, I have divided, I divided. Badlu, they have divided. Badaltim, you have divided, second person masculine plural. Badaltin, you have divided, second person feminine plural. And then badalnu, we have divided. Go up to the imperfect real quickly. Let's look at that. I didn't give you the assignment. I don't think. Did I give you the assignment of putting in the imperfect? If you did it, great. That's fine. But once again, now we're just adding, as it is in the imperfect, both a prefix and a suffix. So it's yavdol, and these are going to be these paradigms, like I showed you in the chart. They're going to be the same for all the strong verbs. So once you get the feel for how that is written, you write every verb form that way. What you're going to really like is at the end of next quarter, I'm going to give you simple sentences, and you'll be able to translate it with no problem. Just do this. Just watch what happens. This is going to, all of a sudden, it's going to, it's just like fragments of information stuck out here, and we're going to find a converging point, okay? So just hang with me. Just do the assignments. It's like somebody told me, well, they started complaining about they didn't get it. I just asked them, did you do what I told you? Did you write the consonants 20 times a day? Well, no. Well, then that's why. How long does it take? How much time invested did it take to write the consonants 20 times a day? It's not much. Did you do transliteration with everything, every assignment I gave you? Well, some of them. No, every one, because it isn't going to work if you shortcut this thing. It will not work. I spent such a long time in my life trying to read Hebrew without knowing how to properly pronounce it. And it's just difficult. It is far better to learn how to pronounce it and not know a single thing you're saying than it is to work the other way. Because once you could pronounce it, you now get to remember it better because you can speak it, hear it, see it. Otherwise, you're just seeing it. That's so hard, man. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do here. And I keep telling you that. And I know that people are going, I'm confused. Well, just hang in there. Confusion will be only for a night. Joy will come in the morning. Okay? Yivdol, Tivdol, Tivdol. Okay? Context defines it. Tivdali, Avdol, Yivdalu, Tivdol. And remember, I want you to be doing a transliteration of this, okay? So it's Tivdolena, Tivdalu, Tivdolena, and Tivdol. So if you're doing your transliteration, it's not that difficult to get, okay? Next. Blow this one up for me. This is the way I learned it, and I really like it because this paradigm I already gave to you, okay? And I like to do it this way, and I like to actually break it out to where that you're doing ani badalti. I have decided. So it's a repetition. See, the I is right there in the T. The tav herakyod, the T sound. That's the I. So this is redundant. To say ani badalti is kind of like I divided. But you're going to see it in that form for emphasis, and it's just going to be translated. When you see ani badalti, you're just going to translate it, I divided. Are you with me? I want you to get familiar with that, because if you go through the paradigm, ani, ata, at, who, he, remember, who is she, he is he. Forgive me. Who is he, and he is she. Don't forget that. Who, and there's a whole bunch of others. I'm not going to confuse you with it. But who is he, and he is she. Who is he, and he is she. Okay. Ani, ata, at, hu, he, anachnu, atim, atin, him, hin. That really kind of guides you. It works for me. It guides me through how to write the paradigm. And later on, you're going to see the guidance that you get out of going ahead and writing out your paradigm for all of your words like this. I can show you a couple things. He, she, I remember then easily the patahe that belongs to a feminine ending. It allows me to remember that. In the simple form, who, we already know that the simple cow is already he. Okay, so it's just badal. So that gives me a leg up. Of course, with badalti, with badalt, are those are two different ones. Badalt, isn't it badalta? I left out a pata. Did I leave out a gametz here? I left out a gametz. Yeah, because I'm looking at this going, wait, something's wrong. And actually, that probably should have a dagish in it too. But badalta, forgive me. Badalti. So ata, I know that's male form. This is a difficult one because you got the patahe, okay? And you think, well, that should be feminine. That's one place where it's not feminine. It's the masculine form. But now we're speaking Hebrew. Ani Amerikai. I'm an American. Okay. So you, as time goes on, I say to you, at Amerikai, ata Amerikai. You're female. At, you are American. Okay. You are American. Huh? Atalo Israeli. You are not Israeli. Okay. So it's not that difficult. You'll start taking these paradigms, understanding more of the biblical Hebrew, and at the same time be able to start speaking some modern Israeli. Next slide. Then I'll come back to this. I'm going to open it up for some questions here in just a minute. Next slide. Oh, you got to do all of that, eh? No. I sent you I sent you more stuff. Okay, for now, just put the book cover up that I sent you. Just put that up for right now. What's up now? Did you not do that? Did you get it? Did you get it? You need me to send it? Okay. Are we like 30 seconds or a minute out? What? Then just blow this up. Just give us something. Okay, blow this up while he's figuring that out. Blow this back up. Enlarge this, please. Okay, looking at this, anybody have any questions about this? It's organized in a different way because I organized it now from the first person. I feel more comfortable working with the first person. One of the things that I also do is especially when I'm taking a whole host of verbs and I'm wanting to do this to the same thing to them, which you should do. Take all the verbs that we have. Oh, no, you can't do it because we only had one strong verb. I think we only had one strong verb in the first 5 verses. So hold off on that. But nonetheless, what I would do is I would say, Ani Badalti, so that I got the feminine form. Now what are we doing? Is that what we've got to do? Okay, so this is what it looks like? Okay. This is what we're going to start doing. We're going to do Mansur's Hebrew, biblical Hebrew step by step. What this is going to do, and we're going to do it next quarter, and I want you to get it, and I want you to start working with it, but get it with the key. Okay? I've been through this many times. It's a great reference to always keep around. What I really like about Mansur is that Biblical Hebrew Step by Step Volume 2, he's just going to teach Hebrew off of Genesis chapter 1. So he walks us through. So the bottom line of it is we're going to start this going into this next quarter, and then you're going to work with it through the summertime. You can actually go through, this is 33 chapters, you can go through it in a month. Doing 1 chapter a day, probably not spending more than an hour a day. Because what you're going to have at the end of each chapter is you're going to have a test. You're going to have exercises, and then you got the key to find out whether or not you did it right. Okay? And then at the end of each section, you're going to have a test. And you're going to keep track of how well you do the test. So you just, until you get 80%, you're going to redo the test. And it's not going to be that hard to get 80%, honestly. And what you're going to do over the first, actually for the first 6 chapters, you're already ahead. You're ahead. The first 6 chapters, I basically took, I added some things to it, but I basically took these past 2 quarters, these past 18 weeks almost, doing nothing but the first 6 chapters. Okay? That's all we did. What I did for you was this. I taught you how to have a vocal reference to all of the vowels and the diphthongs that you don't even know you know yet. You know diphthongs and you don't even realize it. But that is a whole lot. All you got to do is sing the song. Hadula Adonai Kitov. Okay? And you can, then you go, because you know it, you got that. You can always go back there when you're looking at a vowel or you're looking at a diphthong, which is where you have 2 vowels that changes the sound, like a pata yod. The sound will change on you. So ultimately, all you got to do, you're saying, I'm struggling with how to pronounce this, that particular vowel or that particular diphthong. All I got to do is go back to Psalms 136 and you got it. You'll see it. Oh, there it is. And you know how to do it because you learned the song. Now also, to get to the first 5 verses of Genesis, as we have right now, that's the beginning of Volume 2. However, when we get to Volume 2, you're going to really know what that first 5 verses mean. So Volume 2 will actually start at the beginning of next year. So once again, I want to tell you again, this next quarter, what we're going to do is we're going to be reviewing, and we're going to go through the first 6 chapters, at least. I think we can go faster. I'm going to watch how you look at me and what kind of, homework I get and feedback I get. I do not want you learning the 10 vowel sounds. Do not do it. There's no reason to do it. It's archaic. It doesn't need to be learned. 5 vowel sounds only. We're using 5 vowel sounds. And he's going to present 10. Some people present 12. You don't need to do that. But once again, you're going to fly through those first 4 chapters. And then chapter 5 and chapter 6, you know, it's kind of like you're going to start kicking in some of these things that I've just been going over, some of the introduction to the paradigm. You actually don't get the paradigm in Mansour's. I don't think you get the paradigm until like chapter 13. So I'm going to watch how fast you can go. Having gone through it, I mean, I could easily do, you know, on the fly real quickly, just as a review, 2 chapters a day. Take the test, and because it's just refresher. And so I want that to be for you. And reality of it is, you get through volume 1 and volume 2, there's nothing to do but just read the Bible. That's it. Because you will have all of the tools to figure everything out in terms of the different words you're looking at. You know what? Can I just tell you something shocking? Let me tell you something shocking. Mansour even says this. I just noticed it the other day, going back through reviewing this. Mansour says 150 to 200 Hebrew words, and you can read the majority of the Bible. How hard is it for you to memorize 150 to 200 words? Give me a break. My vocabulary is much bigger than that. If I sit down with a program and I start going through a program, I'll blow the wheels off of the first 200 words. I'll get that. I mean, so I'll be close to 100%. And if most of the computer programs that have flashcards, or either flashcards that you can buy, there's 1,000 words. Half of those are rarely used. You know how many times Badal shows up, Yivdal shows up in the Bible? The Hiphil form of the Badal, 2 times. And 1 time it's in the Cal Perfect form. 3 times in the Bible. That's a rare word. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our vocabulary from precedents. I'm going to talk about precedents. I think it's lecture 9, of why we're doing it this way, and things that I think will be more meaningful to you now than if I would have talked about them early on. So I'm just so appreciative of you guys sticking with it, even though it's just out there. And there's a couple of people now that I've actually convinced to get back on board, and because primarily what happened was they started going ahead, they started trying to do their own things, and I don't have a problem with that unless it discourages you or confuses you. And so the person said, well, I was confused. Why were you confused? I didn't give any confusing information. You're only confused because you went on and started doing this other thing with another Hebrew book, and you're going, what are we doing now? I'm like, what are you doing now? Because all we're doing is consonants, writing them 20 times a day. Why are you over there looking at the imperfect paradigm? It just doesn't make any sense. So, so if you just follow, I mean, I'm learning how to teach this because I've never really gone in and just try to, hunker down and say, I'm going to take people all the way through to the point of reading Hebrew and everybody understanding it. So this is my first out the gate experience of that. I've had experiences where giving people an introduction to Hebrew, a first quarter Bible school introduction to Hebrew, and basically just walk them through a little bit of what I did with you guys, learn the consonants, learn the vowel, pronounce a few words, sing a song. So yeah. Now I wanted to stop. So you can get this. I saw it for $5 on eBay. $25 on, or $15 or 25, $15 I think it was on Noble Bookstore online, 20 or $25 on Amazon. Make sure that you're getting the key. What is the problem with most biblical Hebrew textbooks out there? They don't have a key. So you don't even know what you're doing. Okay, so somebody just told me something, they tell me to do an exercise. Okay, did I do it right? Duh. You got to have somebody standing over your shoulder. Got a key. It's one of the few that have a key. They actually have a CD that goes with the thing. I used to have, years ago, I've had it since 1985. I've had it since 1983. I used to have cassettes. I don't know where those cassettes are. But, and that was difficult. What I did was I could go through all the drills that I learned from the cassettes for the vowels, of all 10 vowels, and all these various, but you know what? When you then take it from that to the scripture, you're lost. It's the transition of those syllables. Well, you're not entirely lost. You've got some beginning, but I was, See, I used to pronounce Bereshit, Bereshet. It's wrong. It's close, but no cigar. It's Bereshit. So it was. I had a pronunciation for each word. You know how difficult that is to have a sound and a pronunciation for each word, and now you've got to relearn them because you learned it wrong. It's hectic. Another Bible program that I really love to use, and I don't have my phone with me, but it's Hebrew Bible, and you just hit play, and you sit there and you listen to a rabbi read the Hebrew, and you just follow along with it. So right now you have the skills pretty much. I think most of you, if you've done everything I've told you to do up to this point, when someone was reading Hebrew, you could follow along. You know, my dear sweet Pastor Ann got a little discouraged because she went way out ahead. She's back now. She's back. But even where she stopped off, she could still follow along while the Bible was being read. So if I stopped anywhere, she'd have her finger right on the word I was reading. She just overwhelmed herself and started doing like 5-6 hours a day and all this other stuff. And I come walking in, and she's bought all of these Hebrew, biblical Hebrew books. And I'm like, what are you going to do with this stuff? Oh, this is a really good one. You should have seen the reviews on it. I'm saying, where's the key? Whoops. Did you go check my shelf? I've already got a bunch of these. So that's funny. Communication. We love each other very dearly, and there's nobody that could be possibly a better wife. But even in the best situations, everybody's got their own ideas of how to approach an issue and a problem. And as long as that's fine. So long as you're succeeding, that's fine. If you're failing, then don't stop. And just keep up with the group. Stay with the group. Okay. Any questions? You guys know how to do present tense, right? There's no real, okay, here we go. There's no real past tense. There's no real future tense. And there's no real present tense. But we can give you all three. Are you ready for Hebrew? This is true. It's only a complete action, past tense, an incomplete action, future tense, and there is a present tense that we're able to use, which you had that paradigm. Like if I used badal, right, for the present tense, just to jog your memory, if I used badal, it would be, I'd go, oh, wonderful. That works. So that one's no good. I would go, I am dividing. How did I make it? All I did was put in, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep. I'm not sure about the two gametes. It seems like we should have, schwa. Pretty sure it's schwa. Ani badal. So now what we have is ani badal. Badal. It should be a badal. I'm pretty sure it's the schwa. I was back and forth on whether it's supposed to be the schwa or the sere. I'm pretty sure it's schwa. Ani badal. That makes it now I am. So you go ani badal. I am dividing. Ani badal, I divided. Ani badalti, I will divide. Right? Did you hear that? Can you write that? Well, you can, because once you say, well, there's got to be 3 consonants. There's got to be 3 consonants in there. I've got to hear at least 3 consonants. And I'm going to hear most of those consonants off of the vowels. You're going to get to where, I believe I believe by the end of next quarter, you'll be able to hear it and write it. So my goal is to give you exercises to where that you can hear it and write it. First of all, that you can hear it and you can at least do this. You can at least do this because it's familiar to you, okay? You can at least write it without the vowels, okay? You can almost hear all of that, can't you? Ani bodal. Can most of you hear most of that, right? Especially when it's strong verbs. And then when you hear ani, and you're like, you know, and now you got it, you basically, you know that by familiarity, and you hear ani, you look at the aleph, well, then you know that, well, I've got to have some, either a pata or gametz there. And then it takes long to realize, oh, that's a pata, that's a hatef pata. And ani, because you get ki, tov, ki, ani, herik yod. And I have problems even spelling English. You know, so hooked on phonetics or phononics didn't work for me. I'm still stuck on the syllables. And so that's always been difficult for me. I don't know what it is. I think it runs in my family. But so I basically ended up with the same problem in Hebrew. But I recognize the words. And I can usually get the vowels right. Yeah. And you guys had that paradigm already. So work with that. And if you're doing nothing else but memorizing, just maybe memorizing the feminine form. Feminine form, what was that? The feminine form should be, for this would be, right? Ani Badalti? Pretty sure? Yeah. And so get your like, so you got your the first, you would have like first person, perfect, male and female. Okay, it's a good place to start, right? Masculine and feminine. First person, imperfect, masculine and feminine. And a first person, present tense, masculine and feminine. That's a good place to start. There is a lot of first person in the scripture. Any questions? Is everybody just like, I don't even know where to begin? Which slide should we put up next? Does anybody got any, even just things back from the alphabet or pronunciation or transliteration? Anything? Yes.
When you're saying that if you learn 150 to 200 words, you can read a lot of the Bible, is that 150 to 200 roots or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then you take those roots, and then you can identify those roots. When you can identify those roots, believe it or not, even though it may be something like a hifil or a nifil or a peel or pual or actually something that is a noun derived from that, you'll discover that that you can work through it and identify that word or that meaning of that word relatively easy. If you were through the next quarter, I could show you. I would hand you some things to read and that you weren't familiar with by looking at it, but you would be able to discern what that three consonant root is, and from that, then you would say, oh, this must mean, because you've got probably 4 other words there that you know because of all the repetition. And then you're like, it's like a crossword puzzle. You're like figuring out what this word is. I got this. I know what that root is. I know what the cal perfect is of that root is, of those three-letter consonants. Now it's in a noun form. Like, let's take mim lamed kaf. Okay, and let's first form out of that king, Malak. Okay? And then let's go and let's make out of that a noun. Like kingdom, which is it Malacha, isn't it? I think, and then, oh, I did that right. Okay, so there it is, yeah. Melachot, Melacha is queen, yeah. Melcha is queen. So all of that from one root, that's like lesson 8 though, isn't it? Oh, is that lecture 6?
Yeah,
So you had the root, malach, the rain, the verb, malach, okay? The root, once again, is going to sound like the simple cal form. Can you put that up? Oh, I've only got 1 minute left. It'd be great if you could put, can you put up lesson 6 so that everybody can see this? Lesson 6 slide that has melach on it. Slide number 3. Just put that up real quick. And then melech, which is a sigillet noun. Did I do sigillet nouns yet?
You mentioned.
Okay. And then let me look at that. There's some more words here too, because angels there too. Angels formed out of this. So malcha, melchot. When you begin, can you put that up, or is it going to take forever?
Yeah, it might take a moment.
Take longer? Yeah. So those of you guys who are watching online, you can't see this. Here, hand me that. You can just zoom in on it. Okay. So, in answer to the question, if you have 150, 200 vocabulary words, does that mean you just have 150 to 200 vocabulary words that are about the root, and that will allow you to understand a big portion of the Bible? And the answer to that question is yes, because the root is mim lamed chaf, which we then usually would just communicate by referring to the cal perfect form, which is malach, okay? But when you look at what you can build out of that, look at the nouns you can build out of. There's adjectives you can build out of. There's even more nouns that you can, because, messenger. I'm spacing on what messenger is. But at any rate, you have king, melech, queen, melcha, kingdom, melchot. So yeah. Knowing the three consonant root allows you to get at least an association. After a while looking at it, you're gonna. And once again, how do we learn English? Spelling bees. I mean, it's something I need to practice more myself, because if I see the word, I can read it. And I'm very close to knowing what it means. If you ask me but one of the things of making the transition to where it's in my vocabulary and I can speak it outside of reading it, is I've not spent enough time listening to a word and writing it. Because then that's going to cause me, if I listen to a Hebrew word and I write it out, that's then going to cause me to bring it into the place of my vocabulary that I can actually speak. If I saw the Hebrew word on a page, for example, for angel, I'd know exactly what it is. I'd say, yeah, that's it. I'd pronounce it. And so a lot of my vocabulary is there at that level of recognizing, reading it. So one of the things that I'm going to be growing and developing in while I'm helping you guys is actually doing more exercises to where that I get it set up for myself as well as you, to where that I'm doing spelling bees. Same way we learned English, just never have done it. I've been too busy with other applications. Oh, well, it's here now. Behold. Okay, yeah.
Chris Graham texted a question.
Okay.
He said, why did the hay become a yod in the cal perfect paradigm? It didn't match what he found online.
Why did that? What are we talking about? What cal perfect paradigm?
He
The Cal Strong, okay, first of all, Chris, first and foremost, let me just say this very clearly. Your strong verbs, that paradigm will always be absolute for the perfect. Always. Now, if you have a weak verb which contains yod, aleph, resh, hey, and initial nun, then the paradigm changes. So what is he specifically asking? Is he asking about Yavdel?
He texted lecture 4, page 2.
Lecture 4, page 2. And are we talking about Yavdel? I mean, them finding lecture 4, page 2 could be like, huh?
I'm not sure.
So if we're talking about the Hithphil form of Badal, we don't have a paradigm for that. We are taking and excising out of Yavdel, the Hithphil form. We're excising out of that or going back to the root. We're going all the way back to the root. So what you've got to learn to do, understand this, what you've got to learn to do is no matter what word you're looking at, no matter how foreign it looks, whether it's noun, adjective, verb, whatever it is, you want to be able to identify that 3 consonant roots. Are there 2 consonant roots? Yes, there are. Yod is a 2 consonant root. Okay? Off is a 2 consonant root. Bob is Bob is 2 consonant root back. So there's a bunch of different 2 consonant roots. But most of them are 3 consonant roots. So you're going in and you're pulling out 3 consonant roots. So I said when we were looking at for a strong verb, is this what we're talking about? Oh, it's a different paradigm. I mean, my goodness, we got weak consonants all over the place. They're hanging out on both sides of the word. You know, this is, huh? Yeah, well, this is a totally different paradigm. I'm not even supposed to show you that till you're like 2nd-year Hebrew student. Okay? I'm not even supposed to show you this paradigm. This paradigm, I can tell you how this works. I can tell you how it works, but you don't really, I gave it to you so that you would be able to have a means to identify the hatah that was there in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. Okay? To talk about this paradigm and why you lose the final hey and only retain the initial hey and yod, which is an abbreviated form of hayah. Well, that's a good question. And once again, that's pretty complicated. So what we want to do is to get to the answer to that question, let's learn all of the simple paradigms for the strong verbs. This is a very weak verb. Okay, weak verbs are identified by, one of the way you identify weak verbs, and the paradigms are unique and different and not for memorization. Because if you had to, and there's, you're going to learn some of this. This would actually be a lamed hey, what we'd refer to as a weak lamed hey. But you don't even know the terminology yet. I don't even want to talk about that, the issues associated with it, other than it was only given for one purpose, to help you begin to deal with or to identify some of the words that were there in Genesis. And it's a mistake. I should have never given it to you. I should have never given you the perfect and the imperfect paradigm of one of the hardest weak verb forms that there is, hayah. So don't worry about that. Okay. I wanted to make a couple of early points of, identifying the garments hey for feminine, and and kind of just begin to cause you to relate something to the paradigm and the words, and after doing it, it's like oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Can I take that back? So one of the things that I'm going to do next year personally is I'm going to go through all the lectures in the first the first 2 quarters that we've done, and I'm going to modify some of them. That's one of the things I'm going to modify. I'm going to say forget about it. That means to be. We'll talk about it later. There are the paradigms that you want to memorize are the paradigms for the Cal Perfect, and imperfect. Strong verbs. Then we're going to deal with three different types of weak verb paradigms. Okay? That's going to be a little fun. And it's going to be unique. And it's going to be all about spelling. I can recognize them most of the time. That's probably a little generous to myself. I can recognize them, but I'm not any good at the spelling. Really keeping track of the vowels that are supposed to use. I can recognize them while I'm reading them, but actually writing them out and pronouncing them outside of actually looking at the word, I'm weak there. But, and once again, I don't have a claim here of being a linguist or a Hebrew scholar. I just am able to utilize, I'm able to pronounce the Hebrew. I've got a pretty large vocabulary. I can read big portions of the Bible fluently. There are unique Hebrew vocabulary in Daniel that goes towards Aramaic and other Aramaic roots. That's a close cousin to Hebrew, which I'm still developing in. There's vocabulary in Ezekiel that is challenging. There's some Hosea's vocabulary is pretty easy. Genesis vocabulary, the Torah vocabulary, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We're going to find that that's easy to go through. I mean, I went through that at University of California, San Diego. The pace there was 2 books per quarter. So Exodus, Genesis, you're just like reading, okay, and identifying every verb form, every unique and archaic verb form, and there's some challenging ones, and focusing on that. So some of this, we're going to be learning together, and I'm going to be developing as I'm, helping you. I really believe helping you in the areas that I wish I would have had at Intro to Hebrew. And then ultimately, we're going to get to a place, my goal is that clearly by the end of second quarter, and definitely, should say, hopefully by the end of second quarter, and definitely by the beginning of the third year, okay, end of third quarter, second year, and definitely by the beginning of the first quarter, third year, we're just going to be reading the Bible. And the assignments would be to say, okay, you've got, and then I've got to understand what we can do here in a non-academic setting, rather than giving you 10 chapters, which is what I had at UCSD, then per week. Think about it. You're going to go through Genesis, all right? And then every once in a while there was a backing off of it, and you've got 9 weeks basically, and you're going to get through Genesis and Exodus. Try it, okay? In 9 weeks, you're divvying up a lot of chapters. And I'm not going to do that, 5 to 10 chapters. We're not going to do that. We're going to find a pace that works for good for everybody. But, something like, and I don't want to be scaring anybody, because it's hard for you to project that you're going to be able to do this. You're going to be able to read relatively fluently, just like I'm reading. I know every one of those words. I know every vocabulary word in Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, most of the vocabulary words that are going out from there, because you're going to run across a word like, you stop for a minute, what is that? I'm going to have that. But the more we read, like if I just stayed in Genesis, the vocabulary would never stumble me up. But if you it's like anything else. If you read through Genesis and now you go to Numbers and you come back to Genesis, you're back to I haven't read this now for a year. I'm a little rusty here, so I got to stop. It's because that's the difference of speaking the language every day. But what we're going to do is hopefully get to a place to where that by the third year, we're reading it some, relatively fast rate so we can identify new words. Then what we do is we'll break them down and make sure that we understand those paradigms, how to derive those words, how to get at the 3 consonant root. And then by the 4th year, I mean, we should basically be on track to where that everybody leaves out of the 4th year and you're reading the whole of the Bible. You're reading all of the Bible, but you're going to be, once again, because you're just, if you don't go on and learn, like, and even if you learn modern day Hebrew, you're still got a new vocabulary. People who speak modern day Hebrew can't read the Bible. They can read it. They can pronounce everything. They'll get a little stuck on some of the vowels because it's like you and I trying to read Old English. You can't read Old English. Huh? And it sounds like, what is this, Norwegian or something? No, this is English. Have you ever been challenged, right, in literature? Yeah, it's just like, what is that? Well, I just read the Bible to you. Oh, Matthew chapter 4. You did? Yeah. But so now Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, is like that in many respects relative to modern Hebrew. It's different vocabulary. And, so the more that you do it, the more that we do it. And this is something that you should want to be doing. Because, yeah, you've done the 90-day challenge, you've done the 6-month challenge, okay? The 90-day challenge of reading the Bible. Now, how about slowing down and learning it in Hebrew? Because now you're going to go deep. So, yeah, it isn't so much about how fluent you read and that you got every word completely, locked in and defined. It's about that no matter where you go in the Bible, you know how to get to that meaning of that word. That's really the value. And I should bring in sometime the books I used to have to use to get to the root. It's like this, Brown Drivers and Briggs, and the Brown Drivers and Briggs Key to the Bible, which actually has a number for every word in the entire Old Testament. And then you've got, a couple of other lexicons to go on along with that. And here you're searching through about 4 books to try to get to the meaning of a word. You're held up for a while. Now we get to point and click. Oh, there it is. But we got to be careful of that so we don't get too lazy. Before we had to look at it, you had to write it out. Now you can just look at it and go, yeah, I got it. No, you got to slow down. You got to actually pronounce it. You got to write it out. You got to give a little bit of work. You've got to have your own notes. So I've got all kinds of legal pads with a lot of notes. I've got lots of legal pads and binders with, all the different paradigms. Plus I have the books with all the paradigms. That's a nice thing that goes along with the various different Hebrew books. Not with Mansour. You could take that off. Okay, that should have never been. Forgive me. But at any rate, with Mansour, he does not give you a catalog of the paradigms. Most other step-by-step Hebrew, I have one that was published by Yale. I think I have one that was published by Princeton. You get all the paradigms for every verb form, for all the weak verb forms, for the strong verb forms. That's easy. That's where we start. That's easy. Any other questions? Yes?
In the weak forms, is it always the last consonant that's dropped off, or can it be if there's only 2 consonants left in the root, is it safe to assume the last consonant's the missing one?
When we're talking about weak verbs.
Yeah. Or can it be just...
Okay, there's a lot of rules there, okay, of what gets assimilated, and then you get to know what's assimilated by whether or not a short vowel is turned into a long vowel, like a pate to a pata to a gametz, or whether one of your begadekafets received a dagesh, or if you had with that a consonant like a guttural like aleph or ayin, which can't receive a dagesh, then all of a sudden that changes the rule. So it's not as simple. The answer to the question is not as simple as you presented it. It can be. It can be that actually all that gets assimilated is the weak consonant. And then you see that assimilation go into the lengthening of a vowel or a dagesh in the next consonant. But, once again, if that next consonant can't take, especially if it can't take a dagesh, Now the rules change. So we'll work through them. It's not that difficult. It's just we don't want to go there yet.
Right.
And that's where my bad mistake was, putting up the hardest paradigm known to man, the double hay paradigm. It's a pay. That would be what's called a pay lamed weak verb paradigm. And later on, I'll tell you why it's called a pay lamed weak verb paradigm. But right now, you're just going to sit there and go,
Is that where the concept of types comes in? Like you mentioned, the weak ones are all in types as opposed to instead of being specific paradigms, they're more like types of weak.
right, so you would have a weak verb pay paradigm, weak verb lamed paradigm. Yeah. So later, don't rush into that. Get the strong verbs. Strong to weak verbs. I guess one of the questions that I would have is, I would imagine that you're gonna run into weak verbs probably half the time. But once you get the 3 weak verb paradigms sorted out, what's really not so difficult at all is learning how to recognize the word, recognizing the root. What's hard is learning how to spell it when you hear it. That's hard.
With vowels and everything?
With the vowels and everything. So modern day Hebrew has no vowels, it's just consonants. So for the most part, if I hear a Hebrew word, I can spell it, consonants. Then I'm like going, okay, I'm trying to remember all the rules for the vowels. Especially, it's the schwa is tough, it's silent. Schwa is not really even a vowel. Schwa is not a vowel. Schwa is only a vowel when it occurs it's a placeholder. But classically, academically, it's not even classified as a vowel. However, it has a sound when it occurs at the beginning of a word or when it follows another schwa. But classically, it's not a vowel. But there are some people who do make it part of a vowel, so now you went from 10 to 11. And there's a 12th one out there, too. And, but we're doing 5 sounds, that's it. 5 sounds, we're going to get it. And if you listen to me read the Hebrew and you listen to a rabbi read it, you're not going to discern a lot. There's going to be a little bit of different sound in my strong guttural, like how I say che and cha. They're going to sound a little different. Those are tough. The pharyngeals are a little difficult, the way that some rabbis will pronounce that give a sound with the aleph for the ayin, with that vowel. But we're not worried about that, right? We want to be able to read with each other and understand. I understand what on earth you're saying, okay, and where you're at, so I can follow along, right? We're going to do that, and where that then people from America, especially, would say that are not Ashkenazi, would say that's very good. But if you start to do, that's why you have to watch out and how you're guided. Because if you start going out there searching for Hebrew pronunciation and you're listening to someone who has an Ashkenazi, a European Hebrew pronunciation, it is totally different. So we do the Sephardic, which is Spanish, Hebrew, or also viewed as, Sephardic is also viewed as Middle Eastern. But Ethiopic is different. It's a bit different. More akin to the Sephardic, though, as I understand it. I haven't actually heard much. I understand that from an academic point of view. Okay, reading, that there's different sounds there. I have heard Ashkenazi though, and it's like, what? What did you say? And then of course they're like sure that this is the proper pronunciation. And they don't do vowel, they do wa. And they don't do ta, they do th. And a whole bunch of others. Different sounds. that really, especially on the gutturals, that they're just different. So don't go out there and get yourself confused. That's my point. Just okay. And that is, no one introduces and says, okay, I'm getting ready to speak Hebrew, but what you're going to hear is Ashkenazi. No one does that. You know, they're just, right? Any more questions that I can answer?
Do you go to Israel then for like 3 months? You were talking about that. Is their pronunciation of modern, does it sound similar to Sephardic, or is it?
Yeah, it does. Sephardic. It is Sephardic. And if you go to Hebrew University, it's like you could do Hebrew University, online Hebrew University, Biblical Hebrew, which is credited with the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And you could do online Modern Hebrew with the University, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and get credited online with the live person doing it. Then you and that there's some pretty good advancements there. And then you can see that when you're doing modern day Hebrew, and they're counting, sounds just like how we would count from Biblical Hebrew, or a lot of like at, ata, ani, anoki, anoknu. All of those words are going to be the same. As far as words that would be around, like av, im, father, mother, yad, you know, the regel, foot. I mean, all those words are the same. Ayin, right? Eye, af, nose, oz, and ear. Yeah. So it's just there's just older words there that you wouldn't find in modern day Hebrew. So there's a biblical vocabulary, and then there is a modern day vocabulary, and then there's the overlap of the two. That makes sense, right? But go on, if you go, you could read most of it. Once you get through what we're doing, you'd be able to read most all the street signs. What you do is you just learn that the vav is a vowel. Aleph basically goes back to having a vowel form. Hey also go back to using sometimes a vowel form. You learn where that is true and where it isn't true. Okay, because there's no vowels. So what are you going to do? If there's no vowels, then some of the consonants have to be vowels, right? Of course they do. So basically, when you see the vav, it's it's going to be O sound, O-R-U sound. But yeah, 3 months. Once if you were interested in doing that, once you get through our 2 years of it, our 4 years of it, even, and I tell you, this is one thing that I haven't said up to this point that you're totally able to do. Hebrew University actually offers scholarships for online Hebrew. So you could do online Biblical Hebrew and online, you could do online Biblical Hebrew, and you could do online modern Hebrews and not have to be paying a lot. And that isn't going to run any interference with what I'm doing. Do it. That's only going to help. You're going to be helping in the sense that you're going to be answering the questions, and then next year you're going to be teaching like the first year or whatever, instead of just using my tapes. So go for it. Any other questions? Everybody's good. I got a bunch of questions. Would you like to hear mine? Where's your homework? Okay, good. Okay, love all of you guys. It's a good thing we don't have any of the hyper guys around here. They'd be thinking we got some angels.